Welcome to our deep dive,
Yeah?
into the life and legacy of Hypatia of Alexandria.
Oh, yeah.
She's this incredible figure from history,
Definitely.
a philosopher, an astronomer, and mathematician, who thrived in 4th and 5th century CE Alexandria.
Right.
What's especially captivating is that we're talking about a woman leading an intellectual life in a period when that was, pretty much unheard of.
Right.
Our sources paint this amazing picture of her,
Yeah.
both as a brilliant mind and a woman who faced some serious challenges.
Absolutely. I mean, what makes Hypatia's story so compelling is that it unfolds against this backdrop of immense change, both politically and religiously.
Right.
It's a period where the old world is clashing with the new, and Alexandria, right at the heart of it all, was like a powder keg waiting to ignite.
Totally.
Mm.
Set the scene for us. What was Alexandria like back then?
Okay.
What made it such a hub for thinkers and scholars,
Yeah.
especially in a time when intellectual pursuits, let alone for women, weren't exactly encouraged?
Well, imagine Alexandria as like the epicenter of knowledge in the Roman Empire, second only to Athens. It was this bustling port city, a melting pot of cultures, and home to the famous
Motion.
Yeah, this prestigious school that attracted some of the brightest minds from across the Mediterranean. Think of it as like an ancient think tank where scholars gathered to study, philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, and all sorts of other disciplines.
And that's where Hypatia's father, Theon, comes in, right?
Exactly.
He was a leading scholar at the Motion,
Yeah,
a prominent figure in the world of Neoplatonism.
exactly. Theon was a respected figure, deeply immersed in this, philosophical system of Neoplatonism,
Oh, yeah, Neoplatonism.
which, by the way, is super interesting in itself.
Oh, I love Neoplatonism.
It blends, elements of Greek philosophy with mystical ideas, emphasizing reason, spirituality, and this pursuit of higher knowledge.
So Neoplatonism was the intellectual foundation of the Motion.
Yeah.
Was Theon known for any original work in mathematics or astronomy,
Mm.
or was he more of a teacher and commentator?
He was highly regarded in his time,
Okay.
particularly for his work on Euclid's Elements.
Elements?
Yeah, he produced an updated edition of that, foundational text, which was widely used. However, his mathematical work isn't generally considered groundbreaking by today's standards.
Right.
His strength lay in preserving and transmitting knowledge.
And this is where Hypatia takes center stage, right?
Yeah.
She doesn't just follow in her father's footsteps.
Mm.
She surpasses him
Right.
in terms of her contributions to mathematics and astronomy.
For sure.
What's intriguing is that we have no original writings from her, but we can piece together her brilliance
Right.
from the commentaries she wrote on existing works.
Yeah.
It's almost like a detective story.
It is, and it's these commentaries that reveal Hypatia's true genius.
Right.
She wasn't simply, copying or summarizing. She was adding her own insights, developing new mathematical techniques,
Okay.
and even critiquing the work of established thinkers. For instance, her work on Ptolemy's Almagest.
Almagest.
This major astronomical text shows evidence of her improving the long division method
Wow.
used for astronomical calculations. Imagine centuries ago, she was already refining these essential mathematical tools.
That's incredible. It's like looking through a window into the past
Yeah.
and seeing this woman pushing the boundaries of knowledge.
Exactly.
What about her personal life? Did she have any disciples?
Well, she had a student, Synesius of Cyrene,
Oh, right. Synesius.
who later became a bishop. His letters to her
Oh, well,
offer a glimpse into her character.
okay.
From his perspective, she's clearly a respected teacher and philosopher,
Right.
someone he admired deeply. This also tells us something about her world, that she was teaching and influencing people
Yeah.
from diverse backgrounds, including Christians.
That's important, especially considering the religious tensions of that time.
Yeah,
We've touched on her intellectual achievements
right.
and her roles as a teacher. But what else do we know about Hypatia as a person?
Well,
Was she someone who followed societal expectations?
from the sources we have, Hypatia comes across as a very independent woman,
Okay.
deeply committed to her intellectual pursuits. The philosopher Damascus described her as remarkably beautiful and captivating,
Oh, wow.
but she wasn't interested in traditional roles or societal expectations.
Interesting.
There's even this rather shocking story about how she rejected the advances of a persistent suitor.
I've heard about this. It's not your typical brush-off.
No, it isn't.
What happened?
Well, faced with this admirer who just wouldn't take no for an answer,
Right.
she decided to give him a very direct demonstration
Okay.
of the reality behind his infatuation.
Oh, wow.
She showed him her menstrual rags
Oh, my God.
and basically said, "This is what you're really attracted to. True beauty lies elsewhere."
Wow, that's certainly a bold statement,
Yeah,
and a far cry from how women were expected to behave at that time.
right.
It really underscores her independent spirit and unconventional approach to life.
Exactly.
So she's this brilliant, mind-defying social norms,
Yeah.
deeply respected in the intellectual circles of Alexandria.
Absolutely.
But things were about to change dramatically, weren't they?
You're right. Alexandria, despite its intellectual vibrancy, was a city simmering with political and religious tensions. And these tensions would ultimately entangle Hypatia in a conflict that would have devastating consequences.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
This sounds ominous.
it is.
We left off with Hypatia thriving in those intellectual circles at Alexandria, but sensing that change was on the horizon.
Yeah.
What were the specific events or shifts in power that started to turn the tide against her?
So to understand what happened to Hypatia, we really need to kind of delve into this complex religious and political landscape of Alexandria.
Okay.
In the late 4th and early 5th centuries CE, it's a time when Christianity was rapidly gaining influence.
Right.
And this shift in power had profound consequences for those who held different beliefs,
Yeah.
especially intellectuals like Hypatia.
Okay, so the rise of Christianity is a key factor here.
Yeah.
But wasn't Alexandria known for its diverse population and relative tolerance?
It was, and for a time, different religious and philosophical groups coexisted, even collaborated.
Okay.
Hypatia's own school attracted students from various backgrounds, including Christians.
Right.
Remember Synesius, her student who later became a bishop? He's a testament to this period of relative openness. However, as the church's power grew, so did its desire to assert control and suppress ideas deemed heretical.
So tolerance began to erode.
Yeah.
Was there a particular turning point,
Yeah.
a specific event or individual that accelerated this shift?
Well, the death of Theophilus, the previous bishop of Alexandria,
Okay.
marked a significant turning point. While he was a staunch Christian,
Right.
he had tolerated the presence of other groups, including Neoplatonists like Hypatia.
It's interesting.
He even had a somewhat cordial relationship with Orestes,
Right. Orestes.
the Roman prefect who was a friend and supporter of Hypatia.
That's interesting. So even within the Christian community, there were different levels of tolerance, or at least a willingness to coexist with those who held different views.
Right.
What happened after Theophilus died?
Well, Theophilus was succeeded by his nephew, Cyril,
Cyril. Okay.
a far more ambitious and less tolerant figure.
Oh.
Cyril was determined to consolidate the church's power and saw anyone who didn't fully align with his vision as a threat. This included not only pagans and other religious minorities,
Right.
but also those within the Christian community who disagreed with him, like the Novatianists.
Hold on. Who are the Novatianists? What made them different?
They were a Christian sect that held stricter views on repentance and forgiveness.
Okay.
Cyril saw them as rivals and used his authority to suppress them, closing their churches and exiling their priests.
So that gives you a sense of his approach to power and control. He wasn't afraid to use his influence to silence those who challenged his authority.
Exactly.
And Orestes, the Roman prefect who was sympathetic to Hypatia,
Yes.
he must have opposed Cyril's actions.
Absolutely. Orestes represented the Roman administration
Okay.
and was responsible for maintaining order in the city. He saw Cyril's actions as exceeding his authority and infringing on the rights of citizens.
Yeah.
This clash of power between the bishop and the prefect is a key element in understanding what happens next.
So we had this power struggle brewing a conflict between secular and religious authority.
Right.
Where does Hypatia fit into all of this?
Here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Hypatia, with her close ties to Orestes, becomes a pawn in this larger power struggle.
Right.
Cyril, in his quest to consolidate power, saw her as a threat, a symbol of the intellectual and philosophical ideas that he wanted to suppress.
But why target Hypatia specifically? Was it just her association with Orestes, or was there something more about her, perhaps her beliefs or her influence, that made her a target?
Well, remember, Hypatia was a prominent figure in Alexandria,
Yeah.
known for her intelligence, her eloquence, and her ability to attract students and followers from diverse backgrounds.
Right.
She represented a way of thinking, a commitment to reason and inquiry that challenged the church's growing authority. Plus, Cyril likely saw an opportunity to undermine Orestes by attacking someone close to him, someone who was also a symbol of intellectual independence.
So it's a combination of factors. Her association with Orestes, her intellectual prominence, and perhaps even a deeper fear of the ideas she represented.
Exactly.
It sounds like a perfect storm brewing. How did Cyril go about turning public opinion against her?
He used a tactic that's unfortunately all too familiar throughout history.
What's that?
Propaganda and smear campaigns.
Wow, interesting.
Cyril and his allies began spreading rumors about Hypatia,
Okay.
accusing her of witchcraft sorcery and of being a pagan who was corrupting the minds of Christians.
Oh, wow.
This was a calculated move to demonize her and turn the populace against her.
It's chilling to see how easily fear and misinformation can be used to manipulate people and justify violence. Did Orestes try to defend Hypatia against these accusations?
He did, but his efforts were largely ineffective against the tide of religious fervor and the power of Cyril's propaganda.
Right.
Alexandria at the time was already a volatile place.
Yeah.
And these accusations fanned the flames of religious intolerance.
It's a grim picture. You're painting this brilliant woman caught in the crosshairs of a power struggle,
Yeah.
falsely accused and facing a growing wave of hostility.
Right.
This brings us to the tragic events of March 415. Can you tell us what happened?
It's a dark chapter in the history of Alexandria and a stark reminder of the dangers of religious extremism. In March 415 during Lent, a mob of Christians, fueled by the rumors and hatred spread by Cyril and his followers, attacked Hypatia as she was traveling home in her carriage.
It's difficult to even imagine the terror she must have felt in those final moments. The details of her death, as recorded by contemporary historians, are truly horrifying.
Yes.
What do we know about how she was killed?
The accounts are brutal and heartbreaking.
Yeah.
They dragged her from her carriage, stripped her naked, and then using shards of pottery and roof tiles known as ostraka, they brutally murdered her.
Ostraka.
The Kaisarion, a former pagan temple that had been converted into a church, became the site of this horrific act.
Oh, wow.
It's a detail that speaks volumes about the religious tensions at the time.
It's almost unbearable to think about this woman of intellect and reason subjected to such a barbaric end. The fact that this took place within a former pagan temple turned church adds another layer of symbolism to the tragedy, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It highlights the symbolic victory Cyril and his supporters felt they had achieved. It wasn't enough to silence her. They had to erase her both physically and symbolically.
And the mob didn't stop there, did they? The brutality continued even after her death.
No, they didn't. They dismembered her body and paraded her remains through the streets before finally burning them.
Wow.
It was a public spectacle, a gruesome display meant to instill fear and solidify Cyril's control over the city.
It's a chilling image, and one that raises so many questions about how such a horrific act could take place in a city known for its intellectual and cultural sophistication. What was the immediate reaction to Hypatia's murder? Did it spark outrage or calls for justice?
Hypatia's murder sent shockwaves throughout the Roman Empire.
Really?
Philosophers, especially someone of her stature, were generally considered untouchable. To have a woman, a renowned scholar, murdered in such a brutal way was deeply unsettling.
Yeah.
The brutality of the act shook many, even within the Christian community.
Did Cyril face any consequences for his role in inciting this violence?
That's a question historians continue to debate. There's no direct evidence linking him to ordering the murder, but it was widely believed that he was behind it.
Right.
Or at the very least that his actions created the climate of hatred that made it possible. There was an investigation.
Okay.
But Cyril managed to escape serious punishment.
So while he may not have directly ordered her death, his actions and rhetoric created the conditions that led to it. It's a chilling reminder of how easily words can be used to incite violence, especially when fueled by religious fervor and a lust for power. What about the long-term consequences of Hypatia's death?
Yeah.
How did it impact Alexandria and the intellectual landscape of the time?
Hypatia's murder had a profound impact that extended far beyond her immediate circle. It marked a turning point in Alexandria's history, a shift away from its tradition of intellectual openness and tolerance. The Mausachine, once a thriving center of learning, gradually declined.
Really?
And many scholars, fearing for their safety, fled the city.
So it wasn't just Hypatia who was silenced. Her death cast a long shadow chilling intellectual discourse and sending a clear message about the dangers of challenging the dominant religious authority. What a tragic loss, not just for Alexandria, but for the world of knowledge and learning. It makes you wonder how different things might have been if Hypatia had lived and continued her work. But even though her life was cut short, her legacy lived on, didn't it?
Absolutely. Over the centuries, Hypatia has been remembered and reinterpreted in many different ways, becoming a symbol of various causes and ideals.
Right.
In some ways, her story is more relevant today than ever,
Yeah.
as we grapple with similar issues of religious intolerance, the suppression of dissent, and the fragility of intellectual freedom.
We've explored Hypatia's life, her work, and the tragic circumstances of her death. It's a story that resonates across centuries, a reminder of the enduring power of ideas and the fragility of intellectual freedom. You mentioned that her legacy has been reinterpreted in various ways. What are some of the most interesting or unexpected ways Hypatia has been remembered throughout history?
Well, her story's fascinating because it's been adopted by so many different groups, each finding in her a reflection of their own struggles and aspirations. In the Middle Ages, there's evidence that Hypatia's story was woven into the legend of St. Catherine of Alexandria.
That's surprising, given that she was killed by a Christian mob. How did that happen?
It's a testament to her enduring appeal that even within the Christian tradition,
Right.
she was seen as a figure worthy of admiration. Some scholars believe her story was adapted to fit within the narrative of early Christian martyrs,
Okay.
emphasizing her virtue and wisdom. It also kind of reflects this complex relationship between early Christianity and the intellectual legacy of the ancient world.
So she was transformed from a victim of religious violence into a symbol of Christian piety. How did her image evolve during the Enlightenment?
Well, during the Enlightenment, with its emphasis on reason and individual liberty, Hypatia became this powerful symbol of resistance against religious dogma. And the suppression of knowledge, thinkers like Voltaire and Gibbon saw in her story a cautionary tale about the dangers of religious fanaticism
Ah.
and the importance of defending intellectual freedom.
It's interesting how she's been embraced by such diverse groups, each finding in her story a reflection of their own values and concerns. What about in more recent times? How is Hypatia viewed today?
In the 20th century, Hypatia was reclaimed as a feminist icon, a symbol of women's intellectual power in a male-dominated world.
Right.
Her story resonated with those fighting for gender equality, highlighting the challenges women have faced throughout history in accessing education and pursuing intellectual careers.
It's inspiring to see how Hypatia's image has evolved over time, becoming a symbol for various causes and movements. What do you think accounts for her enduring appeal, her ability to resonate with people across such vast spans of time and different cultural contexts?
I think it's the combination of her intellectual brilliance, her unwavering pursuit of knowledge, and her courage in the face of adversity.
Right.
She represents the power of the human mind to transcend boundaries and to challenge the status quo. In a world where knowledge and information are increasingly controlled and manipulated, Hypatia's story serves as a reminder of the importance of critical thinking, open inquiry, and the defense of intellectual freedom.
Right. It's a message that feels especially relevant today. But before we wrap up, there's one more thing I wanted to address. There's this persistent myth that Hypatia was somehow involved in the destruction of the Library of Alexandria.
Ah, yes, that's a common misconception.
I know.
That has unfortunately been perpetuated in popular culture.
Right.
The truth is, the Library of Alexandria, at least the Great Library of the Ptolemaic era, was already gone by the time Hypatia was born.
Oh.
Its destruction was a gradual process occurring over several centuries, with contributing factors ranging from fires to political upheaval.
So it's important to separate fact from fiction when it comes to understanding Hypatia's life and legacy. It's a shame that this myth persists because it detracts from her real achievements and the historical context of her time. It's been an incredible journey exploring Hypatia's world. As we conclude this deep dive, what do you think are the most important lessons we can draw from her story, lessons that resonate across centuries and speak to us today?
I think one of the key takeaways is the importance of cherishing and protecting intellectual freedom.
Okay.
Hypatia's story demonstrates how easily knowledge can be suppressed and how vital it is to safeguard spaces for open inquiry and debate. Her commitment to reason and her courage in pursuing knowledge, even in a hostile environment, are qualities we need now more than ever.
Absolutely. Her story reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge is not just an individual endeavor, it's essential for a thriving society. And we must be vigilant in defending the right to think critically, to question, to challenge the status quo. What would you say to our listener who's been with us on this journey through Hypatia's world? What's the one thing you hope they take away from her story?
Well, I hope our listener walks away with a sense of awe for Hypatia's brilliance and a renewed appreciation for the fragility of intellectual freedom. Her story is a call to action, a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge and the defense of truth require courage and constant vigilance.
Beautifully put. And for those eager to learn more, we've got a curated list of sources on our website. Until next time, keep those minds curious.